Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Power of Why podcast. My name is Naomi Haile, and today we are here with the incredible Thomas Cumberbatch. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and welcome to Studio 2020.
We're here after, this has been a year in the making.
Yes.
Our beautiful friend Nikki is the one who introduced us, I would say like 12 months ago, and this is the time that we're supposed to be here, because I think 12 months ago you said you would have said no to this interview.
Yeah, and not because I wouldn't want to sit down and chat with you, but just because there was so much happening at the time. And as we discussed before this is the right time for so many reasons. So I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
For the audience, Thomas Cumberbatch is a purpose-driven leader. He is a father, a husband. He is the CEO and executive creative director of a beautiful company that is focused on, it's a growth marketing and strategy firm that is focused on unearthing and illuminating the soul of brands, people, and communities. And it's a company called Godzspeed Communications. And Thomas is also the founder of Studio 2020, which is this playground that we're in that is really about bringing creative minds together in very intentional gathering moments. And today we are going to be talking about the soul. We're going to be talking about the art of listening, and we're also going to be talking about what it took to bring your vision to life. And so I would love for you to start by sharing a little bit about your origin story. What brought you joy as a kid? What did you love doing? And we'll go from there.
Fantastic. I am the son to two incredible Caribbean immigrants. They came to Canada in the 60s and 70s. My father came in the 60s. My mother came here in the 70s. My father was the first Black employee at OC Transpo, which is Ottawa's transit system. And my mother, she came here in the 60s as well. She came during Expo 67 in Montreal. And my parents are both, they're both very deep creative thinkers. And they instilled the art of possibility in me from a very young age. And, with my parents being very strong people, they always told me that what I could think of and what I could dream up was possible to achieve. And I think that's where creativity started for me, was in the way that I thought about the world, the way that I thought about myself. I always tell people that creativity doesn't start with the letter C. And they go, "You're crazy, man. You need hooked on phonics." I say, the truth is, though, creativity starts with the letter U. It starts with understanding.
Yeah.
And what my parents did is they created a beautiful frame of understanding, a foundation of understanding for me, a way to think about and see the world and see myself that has led to 600 plus creative projects as a professional, but 40 years of thinking about the world in creative ways. So as a young child, the one thing is that I didn't, my parents, they did well and they did the best they could, but we didn't have, a ton. And I would think about all the things that I wanted to create for them and for myself as I got older, as I became an adult. And I used to dream about that a lot. What I loved as a child was sports. I loved playing sports. I started playing competitive sports at the age of 9 years old. I was playing soccer, and then I ended up playing basketball, and then I ended up playing football and rugby. I played volleyball. I played a lot of sports, and I ended up focusing on football. I just fell in love with football. I think the physical challenge and the knowing that if you make a mistake, it could be very, very dangerous was exhilarating for me. Maybe I'm like a chaos junkie.
Like an adrenaline junkie.
Adrenaline junkie, thank you. So maybe that's what I was. But ultimately, football became such an important part of my life and literally it was for many years my identity, which I learned later on in life that it could not be, because nothing material like that should define a human being. And what I believe should define every human being is their soul. And I became a whole human when I started to unearth and illuminate my soul. And I said to myself, I want to be able to do that with people for the rest of my life because this experience has been incredible. And it's kind of led me to here. So, yeah.
When you, so you said that creativity starts with the you, understanding. I think this is the precursor to how you approach a lot of your work today.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid, what did that look like practically? Like, what were the things that your parents nourished in you to seek to understand and to see possibility?
That's a wonderful question. You know what my parents did? They invested in possibility for me. So I would come to them and say, I want to play soccer. And they'd say, are you sure? Yes. Let's go sign up. I want to learn how to draw. Are you sure? Yes. Let's go sign up. I want to play football. Are you sure? No, it was no first. It was no. Then it was, are you sure? Yes. Let's sign up. My parents invested in my ideas from day one. And I also have a brother and sister who are older than me, who also invested in my ideas and encouraged me and taught me by example. You know, my brother was a really great student athlete, you know, for a long time was considered, you know, one of the best basketball players to come out of Ottawa, period. And not only was he good at sports, all of them that he played, he was also a good student. And he's older than me, and I got to see that.
Yeah.
Same thing for my sister. My sister is a math major. Who majors in math? You got to be really smart to major in math. You know, really persistent. You know, I had people around me that invested in the possibility that I carried in my soul, that I carried in my mind. They invested in my curiosity, and that really developed my creativity.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question before we delve into the nitty-gritty of what you do, but this is more focused on why you do what you do. And so you talked about unleashing your own soul and unearthing it for yourself. I'm sure, like, that's a never-ending process that we go through, right? It's part of our journey. At the core and at the essence of what you do today, whether it's in your business and how you service your clients, or in your life and how you service your relationships, at the very essence, what is it that you hope people learn by interacting or even just passing you by? What's at the core of it?
You're good at this question thing. At the core, I would say that I want people to feel completely connected to themselves. And what happens is when we can connect to ourselves, we can actually show up in any conversation, interaction, situation as ourselves. And what that enables us to do is build real bonds. I have this amazing group that I work with, the National Arts Center. And we got to work on a really interesting project, and I was tasked to come up with a vision for one of their projects. And the vision and the vision statement centered completely around building bonds with communities. And not only was that the right direction for them, but that actually came from a deep desire and belief of mine, is that you want to develop bonds with people, because out of those bonds come all the things that you're looking for. And I think in this society that we live in, everything is so topical, everything is so transactional, that we don't actually get to the marrow of a thing. So if anyone is, you know, if I get to spend time with anyone, what I would want them to leave with is the knowledge that they, first off, need to identify intimately who they are, and then they need to put that on display with candor and courage and soul. And that's really the type of interaction that I try to have with as many people as possible. Even if it's brief, even if it's someone, you know, I'll be in an airport and I'm sitting beside somebody and we strike up a conversation. More often than not, we're both saying to each other, "Well, that was really interesting. I'd love to chat with you again someday."
Right.
Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, but really, that's what's special about life. That's what we carry with us when we leave this life. We don't carry material things. What we carry are those bonds, and you can't develop bonds without getting to the soul.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think this sets I needed to hear you say that, and I think the audience needs to hear you say that, because it sets the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today. Bring us back to 2010. I was listening to a conversation that you had with the incredible Jodie Ann Beckford, and you talked about your first contract under Godspeed. And you said something, you were in an interview and you said, "Will you hire my company and not me?" And I thought that was so bold, and also it made me wonder what you were thinking about at that time. So can you bring us back to that interview and that first ever official project under your current company, and walk us through that journey where you were at that time?
Cool. I got a very interesting story that's gonna blow your mind by the time I get back to the end of it. But I'm 26. I just realized that my dream of becoming a professional football player is not gonna happen. I go through this existential crisis, borderline depression, and I knew I had to figure out who I was. I go through this process of understanding who I am by asking myself a question, which I think, there's some of my favorite things in the world are questions. Great questions.
Me too.
You're great at them. I asked myself, when was I happiest and not on a football field? And I said, with a camera in my hand. And that's how all this started. And out of nowhere, seemingly nowhere, I know that God has has such an influential role in all of this. To me, it was seemingly from nowhere. I get this call from a hiring firm, a headhunting firm. And I was jobless. And they said, "Look, we have an opportunity for you. We looked at your resume and we think you'd be good for this role." I'm like, "What resume?" And they're like, "Your resume on Monster." I'm like, "What's Monster?" "Are you sure you got the..." I'm like, "I'm for sure this is a prank call." And when I was in university, I took an entrepreneurship class and they were teaching us how to put a resume on Monster. This was probably 3 years before that. I forgot I even did that. Anyhow, I end up at the hiring firm, the headhunting firm, and I do a test. They say, "I think you'd be really good for this role." So they said, "We're going to move you on to the next phase. You're going to meet our client, the person hiring for the role." So I'm waiting in a little office at the bottom of the Canada Post building at the corner of Riverside and Heron. And this guy comes and he goes, "Thomas?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Follow me." And we walk out and I'm in an interview with him. And he asked me a few questions. We talked a little bit about our mutual affinity for sports. And he just said, "Look, you're actually not the most experienced person I've interviewed, but if I were to hire you, why would I hire you?" And let me use this story to explain to you why it's so important to show up as your authentic self. My answer to him, and it's so funny, I'm like, I wouldn't have the courage today to answer the way I did back then. I must have been really, really trying to move my life forward. But I said to him, because when anybody else that you ask to perform a task for you, when you ask anyone else to perform a task for you, they're gonna maybe not be able to do it and then be knocking on your door and bothering you, asking you how. I said, I won't do that because of who I bring to work every day. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I bring God to work every day, and I'm going to sit at my desk and I'm going to figure it out before you can ask me what I'm doing." And he just looked at me and went, "Okay." Just like that. And I was like, "Oh, I for sure just blew this interview." I'm like, "It's done, it's finished." He thinks I'm from outer space. He gives me a test. I go home. He says, "You have 2 hours to do it." I do the test. I get a call from the headhunting firm. They say, "Look, looks like they're choosing you." I'm like, "Oh, really?" And I said, just out of nowhere, I was like, and really out of nowhere, I was like, if I had a company, would they hire my company instead of me? And they said, "Yeah." "Do you have a company?" I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "What's it called?" I'm like, "Godspeed." They're like, "Can you send us your articles of incorporation. I'm like, I'll do that when I go home. I go home, I Google articles of incorporation. I'm like, what in the world are those? So what I did that day is by myself at 26 years old, I incorporated my business on my own online. Today, I would never do that because I understand now that typically you get a lawyer to do that or someone who,
Right.
and the work that I did was flawless. My corporation has had and has no issues. What's very interesting is that person that hired me ended up introducing me to this world of comms and a brand and gave me a foundation that I needed. He was the right type of leader too. He wasn't, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I can't stop it if you're offended. I'm just gonna say what I need to say. I want to say you, I mean the listeners. This was a different era where people were less concerned about everybody's sensitivities. I needed somebody who wasn't concerned about my sensitivities, but would tell me what I needed to, the way I needed to hear it, so that I could move things forward. I needed to be a little afraid every day that if I didn't operate at a certain level, it could be my last day. And I had that type of leader. He's the director of social media at Canada Post, who basically carved out his own role. When people didn't even know what Facebook was, he went to the director of communications and said, we need a department. This social media thing is no joke. I can lead it. He created his own role, became the director, did a fantastic job, hired me, taught me what I needed to. And here's where it's gonna blow your mind. You've already met that person who hired me and gave me a chance. And that's Brian.
Oh, really?
Who today is our COO and managing director at Godspeed.
Wow.
We've been friends ever since. And, I was only there for 2 years, maybe closer to 3, maybe. And, full circle, that person is now working with me to help grow Godspeed and take it to where it needs to go. If I didn't answer authentically that day, what I didn't understand was the same person that I brought to work every day, he did too. Mm-hmm. And that was what connected us. I didn't know what I was doing, but I walked in there and I was bold enough and unafraid enough to just put it on the table. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, then please don't hire me because I'm not going to come in as anyone else. And that's how every brand in the world should operate. Every brand in the world, every human being in the world should operate that way. Have enough soul to be your full self. Because ultimately, you're the one who's going to go to bed every night going, I wish I could just be my true self. The saddest thing and probably the realest thing is that most people don't know who that true self is. Yeah. My job and my calling in life is to journey with those people alongside my team to help figure out what that is because it frees people.
It does. And
that's what gives me purpose in life. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I spell purpose with a U-S at the end. Yeah. Purpose. If your purpose doesn't connect with someone else, it's not a real purpose. It's not a deep purpose. It's not a meaningful purpose. It's not a legacy leaving purpose. So for me, that's what's important. That's why I asked, would you hire my company? It's somewhere in my subconscious, I knew that I wanted to build something with this. Yeah. And here we are today.
Wow. You sharing why you get up every day was the same thing inside of me that felt compelled to start this show and talk to people about their why. Because when I was searching, when you talk about Leonardo da Vinci trying to draw the soul and figure out where it was in our body, right? And what I've read about the soul and have come to understand and appreciate is it's so closely connected to what your purpose is.
Big time.
Right? And so for you to think about us in purpose is very beautiful. And so for you at that moment, 2 years later, 3 years later after that point, when did you realize it was time to bring other people on to bring your vision to life? And what was that turning point for you?
Another great question. When your vision, so I explain to all of our clients when we're doing discovery and we're building the Soul Guide, which is our trademarked brand strategy system. I always explain to them that if your vision feels achievable, it's not a vision. At the end of the day, it needs to be so big. At Godspeed, we call the vision the big dream. Mm-hmm. Typically, people think of dreams as not reality. It has to feel that big. And I got to a point where I realized, you know what? Even my vision for the work I'm doing here, this particular project, is too big for me. I can't achieve it. I'll never achieve this dream. And I realized that at that point that I couldn't do this on my own. I needed to bring other people in who could take on pieces of that dream and turn it into reality. And I've never reverted back to working on my own. Mm-hmm. So after I hired the first person, I've just kept hiring. And, it's been a journey because I've hired well, I've hired poorly, I've had people who were great to work with, and I've been great to work with others. And I've had people that have been bad to work with, and I've been bad to work with for others. Mm. But the one thing remains is that I need people, and that people need me, and that our clients need us, and their clients need them. Yeah. And on and on and on and on. It's a cycle of us. Yeah. And that's really the reason why I hire people, because we need us. The big macro us. Yeah.
This idea of digging deep with people.
Yes.
Is something that came up in one conversation that I had with Susan Odell, who's a technology business leader here in the city. And she's in the business of helping businesses make a profit. And a lot of that involves change management and helping transformation happen within a business. And she shared that 70% of changes, transformations fail in businesses. And she said the same thing. I see the same thing with people in their lives. And she said there's obviously a number of reasons why. But one of them is that people don't dig deep enough beneath the surface.
That's exactly why.
She said that the gray that exists beneath the surface is the very thing that trips people up. And she's like, just do the work right at the beginning. And this is after doing research around how your company operates. The discovery process is about digging deep. Can you talk to us about what this discovery process is, and how did you even know that this is what we need to do before we even start doing what people would think is the fun design activities?
I've been blessed to land on our philosophies in very personal and real ways. When I started Godspeed, I was a guy with a camera and a backpack. And at the time I was doing commercial photography and shooting films for brands. And when someone would hire me to shoot a campaign or to shoot a brand film, I was always like, I need ingredients to come up with a concept. Right. So I would just ask them questions. And every single time, Naomi, they would say, those questions were the best questions anyone's ever asked me. Those questions were better than the questions our agency asked us. Thomas, do you know that the questions you just asked solved some of our corporate issues right there in that meeting between us? Did you know, Thomas, that those questions you asked unearthed stories from my business partner that I've known for 20 years that I never knew? And I was going, wait a second, this is actually my business. The film is ancillary. The photography is just the end result. I've learned that the 80 of the 80-20 is the understanding. So what I decided to do is actually put a method to my madness and develop a system of asking questions that lead me somewhere. And at the time, I didn't even have the language. I didn't know where it led me. I just knew it was to the place I needed to be so I could make this film or shoot these photos.
Right.
It wasn't until maybe a year or two after that that the language of the soul came to me. And it came to me in the most beautiful way ever. Good friend of mine, his name is Roberto. He's a great photographer and brand strategist. He was asking me questions about my business and what do you do? And I was like, well, we do photo, we do video. No, what do you do? We end up getting into an argument and I just yelled out. I was like, dude, why are you doing this to me, man? Like, I help people, I walk with people to find their soul. And then we just both stopped and stared at each other and he goes, thanks for telling me what you do. I was like, oh my gosh. And really discovery is all about.
That gives me chills.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Like wild. This is what and this is now the proof of what I was saying when I started answering this question. I've been blessed with real life situations that have led us to our philosophy. It's not just me thinking in a room and theorizing and writing a bunch of things down. Not that that's bad, but for me, everything has come through experience. So next thing you know, we're working with these with businesses using my system. I used to have to keep a box of tissues on the table in front of the clients because 8 times out of 10, these very serious, stark people wondering why in the world are we doing this? I just want a darn video, are bawling because finally they understand for the first time why they're even doing this, or they find out that they shouldn't be doing this, that they actually don't care. I was like, I'm onto something. And 600 plus brands later, projects later, here we are.
What are, for smaller companies or even people, because I think those same questions apply to individual people. And actually, you believe that brands are not institutions, they are people.
100%. We have this saying that brands are individuals, not institutions. And when you think about a brand or you think about a company, or you think about a business, like you walk into the business, what do you see? Is it just machinery or is it people operating machinery? Who greets you at the door? A robot? I know that's coming, but typically it's a person. Who came up with the vision for this place? Who pays the bills? It's people. Businesses are people and they help people. Without people, they're nothing. So yeah.
The reason I ask that is because I'm curious what some of those questions are for the people who are sitting down and thinking, what would make a grown man cry? By the questions that you ask, what are some of those questions and what is very critical to understand before you start any endeavor?
Okay. We're going to make a deal, okay? We're going to pound on it. We're going to make a deal.
What am I pounding?
I was just about to say you should never pound on it before you know what the deal is. I'm teasing. I'm going to take you through something right now, but you have to answer, so that they can see what those questions are and what that results in. Okay? 2 minutes, if that. So imagine you decide that you're going to stop doing this podcast. Not because of something sad, because you're moving on to a new opportunity. And you have a party with all of your guests. And you're saying, look, I'm going to move on. And there's a microphone. They all get to go up on the microphone and say something to you about their experience being on your podcast. I'm going to ask you this. What are some things you would want them to say about their experience with you on the podcast?
These are people that
You've interviewed.
I've interviewed.
Or worked with.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you want them to say?
That you made me feel seen.
And
I have actually asked people to write me like how they felt. I get a lot of feedback from people after they've been on the show. And what resonates most with me is people feeling seen, that my questions helped them understand something about themselves that they couldn't recognize before, patterns from their childhood that speak to who they are today, and that they understand how what they're doing contributes to the world and helps other people.
So, by your own admission and your words, you want to leave a legacy, a living legacy, where people that come into contact with you and what you do feel seen, where they can learn something about themselves and experience something about themselves that they never have until that moment. Mm-hmm. And where they feel as though they're contributing to progress for the greater good. Those are the questions that I ask. Because your brand, those now have become KPIs for whether or not your work is doing what it's supposed to do. So after every podcast interview, you need to ask yourself or ask your people, did you feel seen today? Is there anything that you learned about yourself today that you didn't know before? What I call this exercise is a beautiful legacy. That's the last part of discovery. I walk them through this conversation. And the things people say, I'll typically say after, are you doing those things now? And sometimes people say, yes, we're doing all those things. Sometimes people say, no, we're not really doing them enough. And sometimes people say it's a mix. But we've had a lot of tears at that moment. Yeah. Probably because I took them through 8 hours of interrogation and they're just really tired. But really, at the end of the day, they're like, wow, like this is the work I'm doing. Yeah. Today I thought, I walked in thinking I was just a glass repairman. Now I understand that like I'm helping people feel safe in their homes. It's like mind-blowing to them. That's an example of some of the questions we ask people. We build brands around those types of answers. Your podcast is about people feeling seen and learning something about themselves that they never learned. And for the listeners, it's the same thing. They're going to see themselves in the stories and the conversations that we're having on air. And then they're also going to learn something about themselves that they never may have thought about before. How dope is that? Isn't that cool?
That's what we're here for, really. Something in me has called me to learn more about acting. And I shared this with you before we started recording. I was walking in Harlem and bumped into this man named Aaron, who is an artist and a former educator. And he told me about an acting class that he was doing, and they're learning about the Meisner technique. And I went to the open house and just was like welcomed and greeted by a lot of like very present people, people who seem like very in tune with themselves. And they did an acting demonstration for us. And then afterwards we did it as well. And the founder asked somebody to raise their hand and share what they experienced. And this was not on its face an intimate process, but I got very emotional watching two people connect and do this repetition exercise. I'm like, I don't know, there's something in me that got very emotional watching this. It's very intimate. It feels like you're really seeing somebody through these exercises. And he said that there's something in you that desires authenticity and connection. And there's something about being present radically. There's something about accepting yourself that I think helps you connect with people in a real way. And I'm wondering for you, Thomas, when I know that investing in people and investing in your team is really important for you, and in this new stage that you're in of thinking what's next and how do I need to show up for my business in order to get to that next level, investing in people is going to become even more important, right? As part of like your things that you think about. And so when you bring people on and when you think about retention and growth of your team, what do you think about as a leader in terms of what you need to do to get people there and help them?
You know, we have this saying that the work is queen. And the work is queen means the things that we actually produce for our clients sits up here. Mm-hmm. I think as a leader who's trying to grow, I personally and the business and our current team need to model all the things that we say. And we need to continue to create work that attracts people who want to leave this type of a legacy. You know, it's funny. I don't look for people who studied business and brand. I look for people who are wildly curious, who love fearlessly, who want to create something that is relevant forever. People who have the ability to communicate meaning to someone else. You know, I often say we're kind of like a team of misfits, because even me doing the work that I did as a child, I could never tell you that I was going to do this. And as a university student, I could never have told you that I was going to do this. It isn't academia or training that got me here. It was more so my calling, purpose, and my passion for understanding the world and then communicating that understanding with and on behalf of others that got us here. I tell people all the time that like no one in any of my surroundings could have taught me exactly how to be a brand strategist. I didn't hang out with anyone who did what I do. But ultimately, I always tell people, we're an archetype. We are an archetype. And when people say, who do you work with? I say, we don't work with industries. We work with archetypes, a type of person. So the way that we're gonna grow is by me continuously meeting amazing people who have the skills necessary and the desire to really find something special in someone else and catalyze that for their benefit. That's really what I'm looking for. Whether you are a designer, a writer, an animator, you're that first. You're that first. I don't give a dang how good of a designer you are. If you do not have the ability and the desire and the heart and the personality to understand a thing with such empathy that you can then create something for someone and say, this is you, right? And they say yes. And you say, perfect, that's what I'm here for. Then you're useless in our ecosystem. Useless. I know it sounds terrible, but it's the truth. You're useless in our ecosystem if you can't do that. That's what we do, and that's what I'm looking for. So we will have to model that in order to bring those people, in order to call those people, even spiritually, bring those people in. We have to be that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we've grown so slowly. Because over the years, you just don't find these people everywhere. My team is incredible. So incredible that they've gone through really beautiful highs and very, very difficult lows. And they've just traveled and traversed with Godspeed, with me, through all of that. And it's because of who they are. It's not what they can do. Sometimes I wonder, like, in the tough times, I go, why do you stay? They just believe in the sustainability of our purpose. And they understand that one day we will become the model of how a business and how an individual should discover themselves and show up in the world. And I know that that's happening every day at Godspeed. And in order to find those people, we need to continue to be those people.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a choice.
It's a choice.
Every day.
Every single day. Yeah. And I'm learning that the only way that works is through something that I'm calling the real AI. And the real AI is all about alignment and ideas. It's not about technology. The real AI is about alignment and then these amazing ideas. And when you have that alignment and those ideas, then you can work on making all of that real. And that's what I'm looking for and what we need to be in order to bring on those very special people. Is we need to find ways to align with like-minded people who we can create with.
It seems like even with this desire to be on teams that are working towards something bigger and creating something bigger than just like the individual people in a team or in a company has always been a very important part of what you look for, what you desire to be a part of. Is that true?
Oh, 100%. I've always been a team person. You know, I've never really competed in individual sports. I can't see myself being that guy alone on a plane traveling the world, being some like lone consultant. It's not who I am. I love to share all of the things that I experience with the people that I love to work with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, we're only growing. Every day we're adding people to our team.
Yeah.
Because the vision is really beginning to come to fruition and mature, and I'm seeing less and less of myself. You know, you can't do this work with a big ego. I can tell you that right now. Godspeed is not about me. Godspeed and Thomas used to be synonymous in my mind. They're completely separate today. Completely separate. I see myself in Godspeed, but I am not Godspeed. And I do not evaluate my importance, my success through the lens of how Godspeed is doing.
Which is very powerful. Because I think in this next, whatever you're walking into, in this next iteration, this next phase, I think that delineation is going to help you make the decisions that you need to make for the company to be what it needs to be.
Preach.
Wow. Preach.
That's it. And I think every entrepreneur, for those who are listening, if you have just started a business or you're new in business or young in business, understand something. It may start with just you, but it really isn't about you. And if it is about you, you won't be in business very long. It really is about all of them. And what's beautiful about that is that when you make it about them, then you can say it's about us. Because you have to join with someone else. It's about purpose, Purpus.
Yep.
That's what it's about. And for us at Godspeed, growth is not about Thomas. I play one role. We're not even allowed to use the word boss. I'm no one's boss. If someone says like, he's my boss. No, I'm not. I can't be the boss of another grown man. What are you talking about? What I can be is responsible to lead the vision of this company. And I can be responsible to make sure that this company is achieving what it's supposed to achieve. That's my role. We all have a role. And that's really what's important in our ecosystem. Don't mistake my confidence for ego. It's not it.
There's before we wrap up, you had me thinking before we started this interview how like a culture of individualism, like we've been talking about us this whole time, and serving people, how living in a culture that's so focused on the individual, how that can be such a destructive force in creativity and in bringing something to life. Do you think that threatens someone's ability to get to the soul?
Having an individualistic mindset? 100%. I think you need to consider yourself and think about who you are and what you need. You definitely need to think that way. But it can't be the all-encompassing perspective that leads your work, your thought, your curiosity. You always have to say, okay, let's look at life or business or whatever as an ecosystem. Where am I? Think about The Sims. Where am I? Where's my little guy? Okay. And then you ask, who else is around this guy? Oh, there's this lady here. There's this little boy. There's this little girl. There's this old lady. And then you say, okay, well, what is my role? Back to the conversation, one of my favorite conversations of archetype. What is my role here? Am I the hero? Am I the jester? Am I the explorer? Am I the lover? Am I the rebel, the outlaw, the creator? Which one am I? And why am I that one? Say I'm the creator. Why am I the creator? Oh, I'm the creator because this person is the explorer. And they need a creator to make the things they need to explore. Okay, now I've really contextualized I in a broader conversation of we or us. There's nothing wrong with thinking about I, but I'll tell you, it's such a small part of the conversation. It's such a small part of the story. And when we as a culture can learn to contextualize who we are inside of the needs, hopes, and desires of others, then we'll all find our purpose.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't live inside of us alone. It lives inside of us. That's how it works. Not inside of us, inside of us. Inside of me, I have a part of my purpose. But it's like a puzzle. How can my purpose activate fully, bloom fully, without it connecting to someone else's need, or someone else's opportunity, or someone else's desire? It's impossible. It's not possible. I'll put my neck out on that one. It is not possible. It's impossible. And that's what life is about for me. Not just business. Life is about, how does who I am connect with who you are, or you are, or you are? How? That's the question I'm asking all the time. And if the answer is, it doesn't, bye-bye. I don't have time to be in situations that will not bear fruit for you or for me. I said to you the other day, or earlier, I said, if I'm here doing this with you, then I'm away from my incredible and beautiful wife. I'm away from my 4 boys. This better be important. There better be a purpose inside of me and a purpose inside of you. Yeah. Or else I ain't there.
Right.
I'm not there. I'm long gone. And I think that that's what I'm learning in life today, is what the rest of my life is. Is honoring and revering the time that I spend on this earth. And making sure that I'm always what I call living on purpose. Yep. Always.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
We started with possibility, and I think going back to the parents we have and the people who brought us into this world. And I think for those listening, I hope they were able to see the possibilities that exist out there when you're able to think about your purpose as being how you connect with other people and how you service other people. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming to Studio 2020.
We're here. We're in the playground. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to listen to this episode of the Power of Why podcast. We will catch you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really good.
Awesome.